Hey, are we live? I guess I better check. I'm gonna go to my YouTube page. Let's see, are we live? It looks like we are. I think we are. All right. It's always good to confirm when you go live that you actually are. So yeah. Wow, hi everybody, welcome. This is our Kickstarter Shadowdark RPG Live AMA. It's a mouthful. Hi. Oh my gosh, so many people saying hi in the chat. I can see it. Hello. Where's everybody watching from? We've got people from, I wonder if all around the world? All around the country? In the US? I don't know. We'll see. There she is. Hey, House. Oh, I see House in there. See a few names I know. Might cross 600K during this stream. I still can't believe where we are right now with you guys throwing so much support towards the game. So thank you so much. Sincerely, it's just been insane to see. It's been just mind-boggling. We've got, oh my gosh, Wisconsin, Germany. Wow, California, Oregon, Maryland. Oh my gosh, everywhere, really. NYC, oh hey, Wisconsin. Oh hey, Greg, I see you in there. Vegas, that's where I'm streaming from. Maybe you can hear me yelling. Wow, hello. Oh my gosh. So cool. Texas. Wow, everybody. Ooh, we've got Scott. I see you in the chat, Scott. Wait, I'm going to click on you. Ha, I did it. I think I turned Scott into a moderator. All right, awesome. Well, hey, you guys. So we've got everyone from a lot of different places. United Kingdom, Ireland, Denmark, Vancouver. Wow, look at that. Gosh, I'm so glad to have you all here. This is super exciting. And, you know, I want to give this time to you guys to ask any questions that you might have about Shadowdark. You know, that's the whole plan behind this, is to answer your questions. I know that a lot of folks have maybe seen the quick start. They've maybe seen the Kickstarter page. But, you know, there's still plenty there. You know, it's a 330-page book, so there's still plenty that you might not have seen and are curious about. You might be curious about all of our inside jokes about stingbats and LaCroix and hammers, which, you know, there are quite a few. And maybe we can reveal some of them in this stream. So, yeah. Well, okay, so I just saw Jeremy Hudson in the chat do a very smart thing, which was write question in all caps, which immediately drew my eye. And so that would be lovely if you guys wouldn't mind doing that when you lead with a question, then I'll spot it more easily. But Jeremy asked, how have things been since the Kickstarter started? And it's just very exciting. I mean, it just keeping track of an insane amount of messages and an incredible amount of well wishes and excitement, which is just flooring to see. And so, you know, I've been doing a lot more talking online than I have writing in the last few days. So that's been a strange shift, but it's just been so overwhelmingly exciting. Question, what information is on the inside covers of the book? Do you want to see? I have a proof copy. I'm going to flip over to my screen. So I have a proof copy. I have the bad one. I have one that didn't have the matte lamination put onto the black. Can you guys see it? This is supposed to have matte lamination, and you can see it scratched up because this is just a proof copy, and so it didn't have that from the factory. So I gave the good one to my super good pal Hank, because he deserves it more than anybody. He has been so instrumental in helping shape me as a game designer and make me believe in myself truly. So the inside covers of the book are here. You have basically I kind of tried to split this out so that the front covers are general kind of gameplay reference that might be useful for either the game master or players. So you've got weapons, armor, and then some basic rules descriptions about distance and movement, spell focus, morale, dying, all stuff that both game masters and players might want to reference commonly. And then the rear covers is mainly for game masters, to try to have a little bit of separation here. So the rear covers are about random encounters, general character information, languages, guidance for XP for treasure quality, and then NPC names list that is completely a separate list from the one that the characters would be using to make their characters. There are 2 actual full roll tables for names by ancestry in the book. So it's that one. So wow, okay, that was one of the questions here. I'm sure I missed a lot since then. Question: what would be the next major rules I think would be important to include in Cursed Scroll number 4? That's such a great thought. I haven't put a ton of thought into the next Cursed Scroll 4 yet, because honestly, sometimes it turns out to be, the Cursed Scroll I write turns out to be something that I get particularly interested in. Like Cursed Scroll 3, I went on a really big Viking lore bender, and that is kind of what resulted in Cursed Scroll number 3. So it's a little bit about what is going to next capture my interest enough to want to write a 68-page supplement for it. And I guess I don't know what that will be yet. I have a little bit of a jungle feeling, Hidden Shrine of Tomoachen, or I actually don't know how. I'm probably been mispronouncing that my entire life, but okay. So let's get some more questions. Thanks for being here. Big into PDF for my iPad, says Julio, as I travel. Don't always carry books. Oh yeah, the PDF version with hyperlinks. It is hyperlinked like mad. Literally every page number can be clicked on to take you there. There's a full comprehensive table of contents where every link is clickable. So we just broke 600K. Wow. I mean, thank you. It's just staggering. Thank you. A question. Do players lose XP when they spend gold? No, they don't. You can spend your gold to go carousing and gain XP. Gosh, I just got a little bit emotionally moved. Thanks, guys. So you can spend your gold to go carousing and partying, and that will result in you possibly gaining experience points. But you can also just keep your gold. You can buy other things with it. I really personally like carousing, though. All right. Another question. Since initiative is always on, do you take it at the beginning of the game and have it for its entire duration? Oh, really good question, Tom. So yes, I usually kick off each session by getting a quick initiative roll. It's super fast because it's just whoever rolls highest, you start from them and then go around. So you don't have to get everybody's number and then write it down and then put it in order. You just say, okay, who rolled the highest? And people start shouting numbers and you're like, all right, 18, you go first. Go around from there. And then when a new combat starts, because it tends to introduce chaos when combat breaks out, and because it's fun to ask for initiative, you roll a new initiative at that moment, and then the fight breaks out. And I personally will usually carry on with that initiative order after the combat, just because it's easy to. But I could see that some game masters may want to just re-roll a crawling initiative again after that to shake things up. So neither is right nor wrong. You could do it either way. Question: can I talk about content, how you all can make content? Yes, of course. This is super important to me because you guys, some of you were probably around for the OGL crisis, and you might have known about my own situation with that. I worked with a really excellent legal team, I believe one of whom is in the chat right now. Thank you. And he and his team helped me kind of scour the parts of the manuscript that I needed help with to remove any OGL references, and give me some guidance for how to create an open license for Shadowdark, which was modeled kind of on the Mjorkborg license. Very similar, because I think that they had such a wonderful approach with their license. It was clear and flexible. And at the time that we were doing this, there was no real alternative to the OGL. Nobody has yet successfully released a big OGL. I think we're still waiting on some major players to attempt to do that. And I know that, so D&D went back to the Creative Commons. They released a ton of stuff under Creative Commons, which I actually thought was just about the best thing they could have done. And I'm now using that in the book, the Creative Commons license stuff. So we were able to return the book back to sort of a more classic, iconic, like the classic D&D monsters by name and all of that. So going forward, I have this license which is meant to allow people to create freely, reference the game rules. I state that in there, but you don't strictly need my permission to reference any game rule, or like hour-long torch timers is not an idea that I own. Like, that's just something that you can use. And so what the real meat of the license is giving people the ability to reprint verbatim the text of monsters and spells and magic items, because ordinarily I would own the copyright to that, and it wouldn't be okay to just reprint those word by word in their exact state. But what the license is doing is giving you the permission to do that, so that you can write supplements and reprint the monster stats. You can create classes and use the spells, all of that. And we are including that license as a part of the print edition of the book, because that makes it so that I can't simply invalidate it. I can't say, oh, that page of the book doesn't hold water anymore, like kind of what Wizards of the Coast did, which is where they released the OGL as its own separate document. What we're doing here is we're trying to make it so that I can't ever revoke it, even when I descend into madness and assume my genuine supervillain state, Even then, I shouldn't be able to revoke it. I trust that my lawyers have given us great guidance on it, because they're an excellent team. So sorry, I went on and on about that for a minute, but we'll make more videos about this, because it's still a thorny topic, and honestly, it's hard to trust anybody now with licensing. I totally get it. I'm in the exact same boat. So more videos, more resources, not less, but that's definitely all coming. So, all right, a question. On real-time mechanics, what are your recommendations for making the best out of real-time mechanics and creating tension? Yes, so the real-time mechanics is really pinned on torches. So the game is actually played in rounds. And these are loose rounds. They don't have to be super rigid. It's mainly just a way to delineate that the players all get a chance to do something, and then the game master get a chance to do something, and then you go back and forth. And so when a torch is lit, when you're exploring, that introduces on top a new time element, which is that real time is beginning to pass. A torch is burning on real time. So what is often the case is that you want to, in those moments, make sure that the players are always aware that time is ticking down. Maybe they can see that there's an egg timer on the table, or maybe you're reminding them, or you're once in a while commenting on how the torch is burning down. But the purpose of that mechanic is kind of twofold. It's to make tracking time really easy for you. You really just have to set a timer and let it go. You don't have to be always marking off time passed and remembering to do that. The time passes on its own. But you want to make sure that the players feel that all the time that they waste counts against them. So make sure that you point it out once in a while. That's my advice. All right, here's a question. What is your advice for creating new classes? Oh, that's really cool. I actually think that making new classes is one of the most fun parts of Shadowdark, because the core book has the 4 main pillar classes, and I did that for a reason. I wanted each one of them to strongly represent sort of an ideal for each of the 4 corners of character style. And I decided not to include any other classes in there because I didn't want to dilute that. And I wanted new game masters to know that they could just say we're playing core and kind of have that be a known element, so that they don't have to feel overwhelmed, especially if they're new to the game, which almost everybody is, and then maybe new to the style of play in general. So I think that creating classes is a matter of choosing an element that you really want to focus in on, like what is this character's overall role or purpose. Sometimes that's maybe more mechanical, and sometimes that's maybe more flavorful. Like, a thief is an example of a character that's maybe both, because their purpose is to be really masters of the environment of exploration, and then to have the specific mechanical benefit of being good at avoiding traps and sort of environment style issues. So that's why we might see 5 different barbarians, and they're all barbarians, and they're all cool. They're all by different designers, and they all fulfill what a barbarian does, but maybe they each lean into a different take. So that's my hope. My hope is that people will confidently design classes that are, that have a set of talent tables that are roughly in line with what already exists by comparison in the core rules. And then to just kind of go wild and make all kinds of stuff, make custom classes for your game world, all of that. It's actually really fun to do. So, okay. Questions. With Shadowdark seeming like a good starting point into the OSR for 5e players, will there be guidelines to convert OSR monsters to Shadowdark? Yes, that's a great question. I have some loose guidelines out there right now, but I do think it merits kind of a more officialized document. Converting from other old school games, like the purpose, Shadowdark was meant to be very easy to use with other old school games. I'm not trying to wall people off from other games with Shadowdark. I'm trying to give them access to the whole OSR via Shadowdark. So you can so easily run old school Essentials games, anything that's written sort of for a retro clone. All of that is extremely compatible with Shadowdark. The power levels are almost identical. And so I don't know if I need to offer a ton of conversion advice for like old school Essentials BX. It's more a matter of making the treasure that you give out align with Shadowdark's style instead of the very large quantities that you would get like in a basic expert game. 5th edition's harder because I pulled the mathing really tight on Shadowdark, and 5th edition is a lot more bombastic and powerful. And I think that there needs to be some stricter guidance, but generally speaking, if a monster is of 6 hit dice or higher from 5th edition, you want to start cutting in half the amount of damage it deals and the amount of hit points it has. That's just an overall kind of guideline, but surely we could go into more. All right, next question. How does backstab work? So, and how many times do you picture a thief getting a backstab in one comment? That's a good question. I think backstab is something where it adds additional weapon dice. So if you backstab with a ballista, you get to add multiple damage dice from the ballista, as one does. But typically it will be done with a melee weapon or, like a dagger or something like that. And if you hit somebody when they're unaware of you, you get to use the backstab. That is much less forgiving and open than the 5th edition version, which I've always found to be a little silly. You actually have to attack from an unknown position, and the person you're attacking has to be unaware of you. So I probably think I could see that happening reasonably once in a combat, at the beginning perhaps. And, in playtesting, we've had people successfully get out of sight during combat in order to hide. You can't just hide. You can't just be standing in plain sight and hide. You need to actually have a place where you can be unseen, and then potentially you could backstab from there again, maybe. So there we are. Question, how well does Shadowdark mix with ICRPG? It mixes very, very well, I would say, because they have a ton of shared foundational principles. I think Index Card RPG was the greatest influence on me for sure. And its writer, Hank, we are both writing pals. I've written some work for him. He's done some stuff for me, and we are always bouncing ideas off each other. And we play ICRPG together regularly when I'm not so busy. So honestly, some of the playtesting I have done in Index Card RPG has had crossover with Shadowdark RPG playtesting, and I've sometimes gradually feathered in Shadowdark concepts into the games with those gentlemen who I adore, and they've been very gracious about letting me do that and test. So very similar, very compatible. Okay, question. If I'm reading spellcasting right, you can keep casting spells every round until you fail your spell check. That's correct. There are no spell slots. This uses a roll to cast style system where wizards are rolling a d20. They're just making a check to cast their spell. And as long as they keep succeeding at casting, they can keep attempting to cast that spell. But the difficulty class goes up as the spell gets more powerful and more advanced, So a 5th tier spell is DC 15 to cast, which means that you're less likely to continue casting it over and over again. So, okay. Oh, Teos is here. Hello. I'm honored to have you here. You asked, what was your approach? I have to scroll up to see that. What was your approach in working on the monsters? Oh, that's a great question because honestly, and this makes me so happy because Teos and Mike right now, they have a really cool Kickstarter out that I just backed that is like all about modding and customizing monsters, and it's just such an art form and the way that they talk about it. They're not paying me for this or anything. This is an unsponsored thing. I just genuinely love what they do. And Teos is asking me, how did I develop monsters? And a lot of it was reverse engineering backwards from 5th edition. It was looking at the kind of core math and power level of the version from 5th edition and then bringing it down in hit points and damage in proportion to the other monsters around it. And interestingly, that actually started with creating measuring stick monsters, as I was kind of calling them, which is, establishing the hierarchy of, what does a +4 strength mean? Like, what is an ordinary creature that could have a +4 strength? And, maybe that's an elephant. And what is a creature that's going to have like a really, like a +4 intelligence? Maybe it's a brain eater, a mind flayer type creature. And creating a variety of those measuring stick iconic monsters by which you can then drill down and make monsters in reference to them that makes sense, so that, a bandit is never going to accidentally have a strength that's just ridiculously high compared to an elephant. So that was the process. Question, is Shadowdark a good starting point for my very first RPG game? I hope that every game designer would say that is true for their game, but I am no different. I do think it is a good starting point because I think that it tries to be simple. It tries to be simple on purpose and impactful. And when you're new to gaming, simple and impactful goes a long way to get you familiar. So I would always recommend starting with a game that emphasizes that, so that you don't have to get into the weeds on rules nuance. You can always learn and add nuance later, but you don't want that to repel you from the start. So, okay, question. How do round-based spell durations work in outdoor adventures where time and movement are much more fluid? That's a super good question. So in the book with the time mechanics, there's a explanation of a process called time passes. And generally speaking, when you're in overland travel, which is by hours rather than seconds and minutes, you're going to be using the time passes rule a lot. You're going to be dealing with swaths of hours rather than minutes. And so generally speaking, spells that have a round of duration are not very effective to use during overland travel. They're effective to use at the encounter level. There are some spells that have very long durations, in the game. Like Charm Person has a 1d8 day duration. So not all spells become irrelevant at that scale. But for the most part, traveling with spells on is generally impractical unless it's something like mage armor. And when you check out the time passes rule, I think that'll kind of help clarify a little bit about how round-based time is impacted by switching into more hours-based time. So, question, how do we get into one of the games I'm gonna run? Oh my gosh, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what process we'll use because I'm running 2 games it's open to the public for anybody interested in the Kickstarter. You don't have to be a backer. And I know, so this is a strange thing. Kickstarter is really careful about making sure that nothing associated with the Kickstarter is like a raffle. And this is because of gambling law and stuff. So I don't want to do like a raffle because I don't want to run afoul of that. And so the only fair way I think we can do it is to announce when the sign up time will be and then to just take the first 4 people who sign up. I know that's very Ticketmaster, but I just don't know if there's any other way to do it that would be fair and abiding by the Kickstarter terms of service. So I will announce in advance when we are going to sign up for the open games I'm going to run online in the coming weeks, and then everyone will get a fair shot at trying to sign up, and I hope that it's not too chaotic. And then also, if that doesn't work out for you and you are planning to attend GaryCon, I'm going to be there, and I'm going to be running open tables, so will lots of my friends. Doc from the chat's going to be there. Some of my dear friends are also going to be there, and there's so many people who I know from that part of the world these days, and I'm just going to be really excited to see them. You can catch open Shadowdark games there. I'll be running them in the halls. They're unscheduled. The way to go is unscheduled at cons, I think. We're just going to plonk down at a table and start running games till I lose my voice, which is what we did last year, and it was incredibly fun. So that's what we'll do. All right, question. Do monsters have advantage in darkness? Ryan asks. I would say that monsters have neither an advantage nor disadvantage. Monsters are dark adapted. It's really mean. That's a concept from old school D&D. where the players can't see in the dark and the monsters can. And I know it's a little silly in a way. Like, does it make logical sense when we think hard about it? Not really, but it's an abstraction because it works, because the darkness is supposed to be scary and the monsters are supposed to be a threat at all times. So if the monsters are attacking the characters while the characters are in total darkness, I would then give them advantage. But ordinarily, no. So that's that. What is my favorite old school module, Scott Hill asks? It's probably Caverns of Thracia. I admire so much the kind of naturalism in it and the 3D design of it that was it's really innovative for its time. It's incredible once you know the context of how Thracia came to be and sort of what came before it. It just is incredible to think how much ground that Janelle set, like how much blazing territory was, struck forth from that adventure. And to this day, it holds up as a magnificent adventure. It's actually it was one of the first adventures that I used to play test, like the actual operational beta of Shadowdark. And it's just, there's something about it that just has such an amazing vibe that's really hard to capture. So I love that one. Question: what inspired the art style in the Shadowdark book? Honestly, like old school and kind of metal art. Honestly, a lot of the artists in the book are from the like death metal scene. Like Lucas Corte is a flagship artist on the book. He did the cover art, and a ton of. Let me see if I can see that I'm showing you this. He did this art, and he did a ton of the interior full page art illustrations, and he's actually a really known artist in the death metal scene. And I came across his art actually on Instagram just years ago and was so arrested by it. He seems to have like a good sensibility for the kind of art that he normally does, but then also he knows and has studied old school D&D art, and you could see that coming through in some of the stuff he did. Like he had a super super cool deep one piece that I saw and I was like, this is magnificent. So I reached out to him cold and I was like, hey, do you ever take commissions? He's one of the very first artists I ever professionally commissioned. And he did the cover piece that's now on the front of the book. It was the very first piece of art for the book, and it was done years ago at this point. I think almost 4 years ago. So we've been working together since then, and some of his peers have worked on the book, and then other artists who are super well known with I just really love the super standout style of people like Yuri Perkowski Domingos. He does this pointillism technique that is just so stand out, and he has such an amazing way of composing pieces that have so much like dynamic energy and excitement to them, and such unique characters in each piece that he does. He somehow conveys an entire story with each character. And so his vibe fits sort of a playfulness that the old school art carries in some ways. And also just a really deep knowledge of the genre, and that is like, I was so thrilled to get him on board. So so much props to the artists. Okay, question: in Shadowdark, is it possible to be eaten by a grue if you wander into the darkness without a torch? Anything's possible in the darkness without a torch. Anything's possible. Question: would OSR adventures be able to be played? Absolutely. Yeah, the Shadowdark is meant to be super compatible with, BX and old school style adventures, the same power level. I think characters are slightly more survivable in Shadowdark because we're bringing in, some blended concepts from 3rd edition and beyond. So there are technically death saves in the game, and death at 0 to me, like, I don't have anything wrong with that. I just think that I think that over time we have seen players get a little bit invested in their characters to the point that I feel like Death at 0 can come off as harsh. There are optional rules modes in Shadowdark that would let you play with Death at 0 if you want to do it that way, but I think as a default mode, to me, a limited number of kind of death saves or rounds dying felt right, and so that's what we incorporated in, and that makes characters a lot more survivable in Shadowdark than in like Basic and Expert. So, question: because of my living situation, I use a VTT. Is there a VTT integration planned? Yes. I mean, I'm not a super pro on VTT stuff. I have to admit, a total lack of knowledge. So there are some amazing folks in the Arcane Library Discord server who are working on some VTT integrations, and my plan is to support them in any way that I can and to allow them to profit from it fully. I want people to make money on their work, and I don't know exactly how to forward it except by saying that is what I will do. I will do my best to support it and to let them profit from their efforts. So I'm hoping that will encourage people to want to work on VTT stuff since it's so outside of my own wheelhouse. Okay, we've got a question. House DM, hello. First off, oh, thank you. I'm killing it. Wow, thank you. We're all killing it. This is our game. So, second, can you share a bit more about Red Sands and Midnight Sun? Of course. So Red Sands is Curse Scroll Zine number 2, which is one of the items in the pledge, and that one is themed around sort of a desert setting with a teeny bit of Dark Sun mixed in. It's definitely not Dark Sun post-apocalyptic, but I liked the harshness of the environment that's conveyed in Dark Sun. I've always just loved that, and so there's some harsh sort of desert crawling rules. Curse Scroll 2, which is Red Sands, is definitely the highest power level of the Curse Scroll zines so far. It's for mid-level characters for sure. Not to say that low-level characters can survive it, but I would not go out into the desert until you're maybe 4th or 5th level. And then Curse Scroll 3 is actually focusing more on gauntlet-style play, which is 0-level play. So it's got some optional rules for that. It's going to have its own like full gauntlet as well, and that is going to have 2 classes that are sort of more Viking themed as well. So that one is really fun as well. I'm excited about both of them. They're very different, but each is its own contained kind of thematic setting, adventures, character options, and optional rules and monsters. So, okay. Question: have you received any questions about resurrection? Yeah, there's no resurrection spell in this game. That's not to say there couldn't be. I just, as a default mode, didn't want that. I think that it makes character death less significant. But you could simply add it as a spell. Simply add it. I would make it so that casting it too many times on the same person has bad outcomes, or it takes a toll. I would always make kind of one thing in Shadowdark is that everything always takes a toll. You don't just get to do things for free all the time. so as long as you're making it matter, you are. Somebody, Grumpy Billows is in the chat right now. Grumpy, I didn't know you were going to be here. I thought that you were still just a character that has yet to be printed and distributed. All right. Question: what are your plans for Shadowdark after the book and Cursed Scrolls have gone out? To keep writing for it. I have a secret plan that I'm so excited about. I've been thinking about it for years. I want to, everyone's going to hate this. I want to write a mega dungeon, but make it totally, the presentation of it so different. And I'm not going to over reveal what that plan is, but I'm just so excited about it. I keep thinking about it. You know that you have a good idea when you don't stop thinking about it during like mundane chores, like when you're washing dishes, you find yourself thinking about it. And that's my thought on what I want to do with this mega dungeon. So I think it's going to have to come to be. That's a sign that it's going to have to come to be. So question. Let me find another question. All right. Scald class, like a bard. Yes, that would be fun. I don't have one. I actually didn't put one into Curse Scroll 3 because there's already a spellcaster class in it, and actually there wasn't enough room in the zine to make 2 spellcaster classes with their own spell list. So it's 1 spellcaster. So maybe like a bard type take of my own is forthcoming. There are already some other folks who've done great takes on the bard. Maybe I'll make one too. I think it would be fun. So I don't discount it. JB Couvert, hey, you're here. Hey, it's so good to see you in here. How did I print that huge map in the photo for GaryCon? Oh, yes. Okay. This is super fun. That I have that map drawn on like a standard, it's like out of reach. I'm not going to go grab it, but on like a large piece of graph paper and then scanned it. And then I used that file and printed it on 13-ounce white vinyl from 48hourprint.com. And it's somewhat affordable and super durable. I rolled that thing up, folded it, put it in my suitcase, spilled drinks on it, and it's just impervious to harm. And so you can actually customize the exact size of their vinyl banners so that when you print, you know that a square is an inch. So if you know that your grid that you're drawing on is 20 by 20, then you want to print add a 20 by 20 inch piece of vinyl and make sure that your image fills it. And you can get lots of rad maps printed up that way. It's a little too expensive for the Kickstarter. I tried to figure out if we could add that as an add-on or a stretch goal, but the price of them actually increases per unit at scale instead of goes down. So it just wasn't feasible, unfortunately. But yes, but it is a cool thing to do. Question, have you heard the Runehammer Shield Wall voted Hankerin to write a Shadowdark? I have heard. He told me, and that's incredibly exciting and flattering. And it makes me happy that he's excited about that too. I know he's working on it. He's shown me a little sneak peek of it. And it's honestly so cool. Hank is like a very rare designer in that he can learn a system and then immediately elevate it. Like he's using the adventure writing guidance in the book, and I read some of what he had written, was just blown away because he took concepts that I kind of pitched for some core adventure writing ideas and just made them flawless. You know, he presented them in just an ideal way, and I'm excited for you guys to see it because I'm so impressed. I look up to him greatly, and he always amazes me. So I'm so excited for you all to see that adventure. Question, can Shadowdark be run Theater of the Mind, or is it intended to be run with maps minis? Oh, and Paul, hello, thank you. It's good to see you in here, Paul. You can run it with Theater of the Mind, yes. I did design the game assuming that there would be some form of like table map, but distances are abstracted in the game, so it's a little easier to run Theater of the Mind when you're using abstracted and relative distance, which I think is the biggest challenge in Theater of the Mind. So I think it works well in both. Is that a cop-out to say that I think it would work equally well in both? I think that it would. Yeah, so that's my thought on that. Question, does the character on the back of the premium book have a backstory? Yes. Both characters, the one on the front of the ordinary book and then the premium book, each have story. And the full Shadowdark book is not presenting a setting, you know, and I tried to keep it very light as far as that goes because the goal was to make a system, not really a setting. I want you to be able to use it with your setting of choice. So that's a thing, but I couldn't help it. I did work in some of my own headcanon from my own game world in a way that I hope would be easy for you to incorporate because it's more like suggestions and hints. But the front of the book, of this book, is the 10-eyed oracle. And if you inspect closely, you will see that his central eye, has something special about it. And it's actually the origin of the Arcane Library's logo. There's a story origin. And then the character on the front of the premium book is Mordanticus the Flayed, who is an enemy of this being, but why that is something that you'll have to learn about by reading the book, I think. So, okay. I'm seeing so many kind statements. Thank you guys so much. Game designer, awareness of the skill and the business side. Oh, thank you. Oh yeah, I really appreciate that. I think that being called a not only a good game designer, but an astute businesswoman is an immense compliment. Thank you. I think that it's kind of simple. It's just write something that you really care about and then do your best to show it to other people. I know it sounds silly, but that's the whole thing. So question, how are rations and supplies tracked with the real-time mechanics? Thank you. Hunter, yes. So rations are really only consumed during resting and downtime. While you're resting, it's unlikely that there's a real-time mechanic active, like a torch. So you would just consume it. You would consume a ration. You need to consume one while you're resting in order to gain the benefits of resting. So yes, I think that the use of rations in real time are almost never going to happen at the same time. So, okay, question. Well, how will the marshals grow with each zine compared to casters who get new spells released over time? Oh yeah, that's a great question. There's no doubt that martial and spellcasting characters tend to have like an inflection point where spellcasters become powerful, and that is true. That's true, but spellcasters become very powerful at high levels because they also are really hard to keep alive, and so it's sort of the payoff. But I think that the point of designing both and trying to stay true to their purpose is making sure that, especially, that fighters get to stay cool and get to really excel at combat. I'm not just saying like be fine in combat, but they have to really dominate combat. That's what one of the design goals of a fighter was. They need to be the anchor in a fight in order to be a satisfying character in comparison to the others. And you know what's so funny? I'm going to throw out a little story. When I was a kid playing D&D with my friends, we were exploring like underneath the city state of the Invincible Overlord and the dungeons below there. It's the Wraith Lord. And we had a dwarf fighter in our group played by my friend Ryan, who was just an absolute tank. Like, and I don't mean that in like the game sense term. I just mean he was just an absolute beast. And we would cling to him like an anchor because we would be getting our butts kicked the whole time down there. Like, our game master was awesome and he was running like old school style D&D for us. And, you know, if we did something dumb, we would pay. And I cannot tell you how many times Ryan's dwarf, who I believe his name was Nogrim, just was like critting with his Warhammer and just smashing stuff, and we would all be hiding behind him. And I just wanted to bring that feeling back with fighters. I wanted them to be like a pillar of combat. So that's them. All right. Question. I know it's not an OSR habit, but I have trouble choosing monsters more or less adapted to the level of the PCs. Yeah, I mean, I think that your awareness of the fact that balance in combat in OSR games isn't really a thing is, I think, a good first step. But you also don't want to be, you know, throwing ridiculous things at your players that seems mean-spirited. So I think that really there's a lot of feeling out the rudder with a new system. Like, I would start small and simple. Like, I would test combat a little bit and dip your toes in and see, how does a 3-goblin combat play out? How does a 4-orc combat play out? How does combat when my players are being surprised play out, which is usually very bad for them. And don't be afraid to push it a little bit, because the characters can retreat and it is easy to underestimate the characters. So it's even, I do this where, you know, I'm not throwing an appropriate challenge, because a challenge is something that's going to make the characters strive. You know, it shouldn't just be grindy. It should make them strive. So don't be afraid to amp it up a little bit, but you just need to run a couple of combats and feel out how it works to know what reference points you have. I do have some guidance in the book about how to build like what's technically a balanced encounter, with the caveat that balance is not the goal. It's just so that you kind of know where the middle ground lies. So, all right, questions. Speaking of setting versatility, can the game rules be used to run non-dungeon crawling games? For sure. In much the same way that ordinary D&D can be, this is the same. There's, you know, actually there's a huge amount of resources in the book for developing NPCs and more like urban and non-dungeon style settings. Because that's just as important as going down into the dungeon, you know, and sometimes you're going to have an above ground adventure. Sometimes you're going to be invading the Thieves Guild, you know, so it's just as supported as an ordinary D&D. And there's no reason or limitation why it wouldn't be just as possible. So, okay, cool. Question. What is the name of the favorite character I've ever played? That's really hard. I tend to really like goblins for some reason. It's just been like, I did play a really funny goblin named Thelonious Brack, who was an actual character of mine, and now he's a named character in the book because that's what one does, right? You add your Melfs and your, you know, Raries and, you know, and your Odalukes and all that. So yeah, so Brack he was a really funny, very intelligent goblin, and he is now a wizard in the book as well. And in some of my other adventures, he's a little Easter egg in there. Speaking of Easter eggs, there are a lot of them in the book. Hammers. Hammers are not in the book, but are they not, though? Are they not? I guess you guys are going to have to really look. And I will say that on the Game Master screen, I mean, there might be some Easter eggs, but I'm not going to give it away. You have to actually look when you get one in your hands. So, question, are retainers hired help more important in Shadowdark for small player groups? That's one of the things I find off-putting in Old School Essentials. Oh, interesting. So, most people say the opposite, actually, that they prefer to have that because it's such a, a cornerstone of old school play. But I'm actually with you. I don't love retainers being necessary, because to me, dungeon exploration is I always come back to this story. This is like a classic Conan the Barbarian story. Red Nails is an incredibly fascinating sword and sorcery story, and it's about Conan the Barbarian and one of his adventuring companions kind of going on an incredible adventure inside of essentially an enclosed city that's an ancient crumbling ruin. And I was always struck by the fact that Conan did not bring in a squad of retainers to hold his torch for him. Sword and sorcery, which is my favorite genre, is really focused on gritty heroics of small groups. And whilst hirelings are entirely possible to use, I'd probably use 0 level characters and or the rules that Lord Tath is presenting. He's a third-party writer who does a great job for Shadowdark. I wanted to write the core game for it to not be necessary because I was trying to write a game that could play Red Nails. So I would read that story if you want to scope it out and get a feel for it's some D&D history, because it was very inspiring to the original writers of D&D as well. So, all right. Question, will the physical hardcover book be available to buy after the Kickstarter? Yes, absolutely. I'm going to keep manufacturing this book and selling it for as long as people want it. So, all right. Question, what is your method for adapting and adding races to settings that don't have them? I think creating races and ancestries for Shadowdark is really easy. Or it's pretty, I mean, I wouldn't say it's easy. You do have to think about it, but each one has sort of a specific single talent that is kind of tried to be distilled down from what the prototypical concept of like what a dwarf is. So I think creating new ones is like nothing too hard to do. Like you can use ones from other settings to be inspired and to create a Shadowdark like version. Like as a joke, I don't know if this is a silly example, but in the comments on the Kickstarter, there was a really funny person who commented whose name was that of a kobold. It was like kobold sorcerer or something, and asked, are kobolds playable in this game? And I said, well, they're not in the core book. I'll make one for you right now. And I actually posted what I would create as the game stats for a kobold ancestry. So if you want a kobold ancestry, there is one right there. You can go grab it. And that's kind of an example for how I would do that. So question, how would you adapt something like Curse of Strahd? Ooh, Curse of Strahd would be, of all of the campaign settings, I think Curse of Strahd would be the most adaptable, because it is really a very sandboxy style campaign, which is meant to be a free exploration with an enemy, sitting high in the castle that you can confront when you want. But I think that how I would adapt that would be, first of all, just trading out the monster stats, the 5th edition version over to the Shadowdark version. And, I tried to write almost every SRD monster. I converted into a Shadowdark style stat block. There's like 239 or 40 monsters just in the core book. I would do that. Swap out characters on a one-to-one basis. And honestly, is there anything else you would need to do? I don't really think so. I would use Shadowdark's like overland travel and resource management rules. Strahd is a vampire. Vampires in Shadowdark are super scary. I think that's all I would do. Yeah. Maybe I'll think of something later that could be additional. Okay, question. What part of the system do you think groups will homebrew first? Oh, totally. I think it'd be character generation. I think that it's the number one most homebrewed thing, is people want to kind of change the process for character creation, which is totally understandable, and it won't break the game. If you want to roll 6 stats and assign them, you are not going to break the game. If you want to roll 46, drop the lowest, I really don't think you'll break the game. Your characters will be a lot more powerful, but it's not outside of the boundaries of what would break anything. So I think that's going to be the first thing people change. People already do, and in some cases I do. It depends on what kind of game you want to run. So the one thing I want people to take away from this is that you should tinker. Maybe this isn't said often, but the spirit of the OSR is very much about tinkering and blending. And one thing people have been saying about Shadowdark is that this feels like a batch of homebrew rules, and maybe in a way it does, because this is a lot of tinkering. This is the result of a lot of tinkering, and so I want you to do that too, and to not think that anything is a sacred cow. There are gameplay concepts in the book, and I actually have a few pages written in the book specifically about here's what I would do to not break the core conceits of how the game works. I try to lay that out very clearly, so that when you tinker, you can do so like knowingly. But beyond that, just know what levers you're pulling and what the expected result will be when you pull it. And there you go. So, okay, question. Oh, mechanics of scrolls versus spells. Oh, yeah, so scrolls you're casting off of. You're making an attempt to cast off of a scroll, and whether or not you fail, that scroll dissolves. So scrolls are a little less, they're like a one-time attempt. So that's scrolls. And wizards can learn spells from a scroll. They would have to make a check to see if they can successfully learn that spell. And if they do, they add it to their known spells. It's actually a super powerful talent that wizards have. So they can go questing after magic. Question, do you have a ledger of all your dead PCs? I don't. Maybe I should make one. I have a stamp that I use to stamp people's character sheets when they die in my game. I'm kind of a forever DM. I don't really get to often play very much, which is fine because I actually prefer DMing. It's my favorite thing to do. So I should somehow keep track of these though. I should have a book of the dead. So question, what about allowing talent rolls every level? I want players to feel like every advance is cool. Yeah, I mean, you absolutely could. Of course, it would make your characters more powerful. And a lot of the abilities in Shadowdark, so talents come at every odd level. And a lot of the talents, like the talents that characters start with, get a form of upgrade at the even levels. So in many cases, I think in all cases, a character is going to have some form of measurable increase to something every level. But it's more subtle on the even levels. So if you want to roll a talent every level, I mean, try it. That could be cool. If your characters are getting ridiculously out of control, just make the monsters harder, Question. Okay, the Quick Start Guide has rules for treasure as XP. The guideline is a bag of gold for 1 XP. Is there more solid guidelines for gold, such as 100 for 1 XP? Anthony is asking. Anthony, I'm so glad you asked that because this is the result of years of playtesting. Every time I tried to assign a numerical value to a treasure, it just didn't seem to make it easier to know how to award that treasure. Actually for a long time, actually up past through the beta rules and into the Golden Master, which is the pre-release version, I had specific gold piece numbers attached to treasure values. And I realized that it just wasn't working because DMs would get too stuck into trying to calculate actual values, when in reality, it's an abstract concept. It is like measurement. There are sometimes numbers attached, or movement measurement, I should say. We have some numbers attached to movement when you need it, but for the most part, it is abstract. So I removed those concrete numbers because they were hindering people's ability to make the decision about what treasure is. So 1 XP treasure is just a good treasure, like a cool treasure. I found a bag of gold. Maybe there's 100 in it. Maybe there's 50. Maybe there's 20. As long as to the character in the context, it's a good treasure, then give 1 experience. If it's a ridiculously cool treasure, like a magic sword, I would give 3 experience. And that is going to be 95% of your operating procedure. I made legendary items now actually worth 10 experience points. That's their final result because you don't just stumble onto those. Those are quest-worthy items. Those are Excalibur. And so 10 XP is a good amount. The value of the treasure is also a huge factor because characters can spend that money carousing. So take that into account as well. And pretty much always just be giving out 1 XP unless it's super cool, then give out 3. Maybe 3 is a couple times, once or twice in an entire adventure. So, all right, question. How compatible is Shadowdark with modules from other systems? Oh yeah, I guess we kind of talked about that a little bit. Very compatible, very, very compatible. It was intended to be designed that way. So, okay, question. How do we handle the inevitable use of fire to light entire dungeons instead of torches? I love it. I mean, what character group doesn't try to just burn it all down at one point? I've been there. Last game I ran, my characters burned down the mayor's house in town and then had to flee into the swamp because then they were persona non grata. So, if they try to burn everything down, let them burn it down. I mean, let them set the dungeon on fire and see what happens. All right. Question. How do we, was writing always your day job or did you start off doing something else? So yes and no. I went to school for newspaper journalism back when newspapers existed. And I did that work out of college when I graduated for a while. I was a crime reporter and a local interest reporter for a newspaper group in southern Wisconsin. And I did do that as my I guess my day job for a while. And then I did some other things with my career, and it always involved writing in some way. before I became a professional game developer, which was like 4 or 5 years ago, living full-time on game design and development. So I was working in information technology and like systems engineering, which I think taught me a lot about system design, actually. So that was actually really cool. And to this day, my dearest friend is my former boss, a peer who became my boss. She's going to be at GaryCon, and she's going to be running games with us and playing too. So life really is strange. Okay, question. Any advice on running an open table for Shadowdark? For sure. I love running open tables. It's my favorite way to do it. I actually have an article, a blog post on my site that talks a little bit about this, but it's basically just letting characters come and go from the game. I would run a dungeon where it's okay for people to come and go, and there's no real story that's going to get shattered by the key person not being there. And I would also encourage your players to have stables of characters, which is a fun word that my friend Brian, actually, in the Discord server, has used this phrase before, but having a stable of characters to kind of fall back on and to develop. Like, you don't always send the same character along, and you're going out onto forays into the dungeon, and generally you want to end those forays and have them go back to safety at the end of each session. That's kind of the cleanest way to run an open table. And there's a little bit of swooping, like, okay, you guys go back home now. But it's better than like letting there be chaos in the dungeon as like a group is frozen in time in there. I think only rarely should that happen in an open table. And like, people develop multiple characters at a time and send out their wizard this week and send out their fighter next week and have fun. So there we go. Question, do you gain XP when you first find treasure or when you get out of the dungeon? And do you level at rest or immediately? Jack, that's a great question, and I didn't define that answer in the book because everybody has such different preferences on that. And I actually don't think that it matters. I don't think it's a big deal however you do it. I give treasure out immediately, or XP out immediately, because I want the characters to realize, to associate finding the treasure with getting the XP. It's a little Pavlovian. Like, the point of the XP system is to reward finding treasure, so I try to keep that link very close. I generally don't let players level up until they've reached safety because it's just weird otherwise. But so many game masters do it so differently, and I will say that it's not going to break the game if you do it one way or the other. So, question, I like the differences between wizards and sorcerers in 5e. Do you have a plan to introduce a sorcerer in a later product? I'm interested in my spin on it. I don't have a concrete plan to do that, but I don't discount the possibility. I think there's tons of new approaches that we could take to spellcasters. I love psionics. I don't know. Maybe someday we'll see something like that. So there's tons of different subsystems we can use for spellcasters, like the proverbial points, spellcasting points. I probably will never include Vancian casting because I really just don't like it. I don't like the slot system, and I think new players find it incredibly confusing. So there's that. But yeah, maybe. Sorcerer someday. I'll definitely let that one stew around. So, question, how much cosmic horror will there be, says the Otaku Cat. Probably a lot, because I really love horror. It's just a genre that I always find myself writing. And the honest truth is that the really old school style D&D is actually horror. It's resource management against an encroaching darkness full of terrors. And the thrill comes from trying to escape the unknown dangers that you can't see. And so really old school D&D is actually, it's a horror game. So I'm always writing, I just can't help it. I always include horror elements in what I write. I just like it. Okay. Question, says Skrill. Hey Skrill, what's up? For someone who loves collecting bestiary books, what existing system has monsters closest to the power level of Shadowdark? Definitely Basic Expert. Oh, this book. I'm just finally getting a chance to glance through this right now. This is from the Mary Mushman. I just backed this, a Folklore Bestiary, and this is the Old School Essentials compatible version. Perfect. You could use this so easily in Shadowdark. I intend to. I'm planning to. And the power level is pretty much like 1 for 1. I don't even think I would actually change anything except, in the situation where we would need to know a monster's stat bonus to assign one that seems reasonable based on my knowledge of the measuring stick monsters. An elephant has, +4 strength, I believe. Now I have to check because I had a whole very complex system when I was building the monsters for this, but now I'm like, oh, I gotta go find a spreadsheet somewhere. But yeah, become slightly familiar with some monsters that make sense to you, and then attach the stats that make sense in context to an old school Essentials monster if you were to happen to need that. So, question, can you shout out a TTRPG designer who you admire, who influenced my design philosophies? I mean, totally. There's a huge bunch. I think the whole team that designed Dungeon Crawl Classics, I just like when I first came across Dungeon Crawl Classics a long time ago. I mean, a while ago. It totally made me realize that yes, you can customize without upsetting people. Like there is not truly a sacred cow in D&D. So like the whole design team for DCC. I mean, my first game master, he was already helping us design stuff as kids. Like he was kind of trying to teach us how to have a design mindset. He let us write some material for a licensed judges guild product, which was just nuts that we got to do that. And he had a co-publishing company with Bob Bledsaw, so that was an interesting time. So yeah, even back then, and then obviously Hank from Runehammer, just a huge influence, both like, I guess spirit wise to the game and the idea of designing to your own tastes and trusting that what you think is cool is important and probably what other people would think is cool. Oh my gosh, there's so many. I literally feel like I could, like, I'm looking at like design and aesthetic. I mean, Gavin Norman, is there anyone more amazing at doing like layout, and the Mary Mushman team? Adventure writers of incredible note, like Harley Stroh, the folks at Goodman, like the Stonehell writer. Gosh, why is his name escaping me? Michael Curtis. Just, Stonehell is just so cool. I could go on. There's elements of every designer, whether it's because of their adventure writing philosophy or their approach to game design or their layout or whatever. There's so many elements and facets that I could name 10 inspirations for each. Question. Speaking of DCC, have you run Sailors on the Starless Sea? I've run Sailors on the Starless Sea with DCC. I haven't run it with Shadowdark, so it would be fun to try that. Question. Why did you include level titles, and how can you give an example of how they'd work in gameplay? For sure. Titles are kind of like, they're honestly kind of fluff in a way, but I always thought they were super fun from old school D&D. Having a title kind of gives you a sense of having earned something that is other people might recognize, and it's really just more of a role-playing cue. Like an Archmage is a 10th level wizard. Having the title of an Archmage is definitely going to carry more weight than having the title of apprentice. So it is on the players and game master to make that matter. There's no mechanical benefit to it, but players also kind of enjoy attaining a new title. Like, it feels like you did something. It feels like earning a badge in Pokemon Red after you beat the gym leader, So, question. Chris Cooper's asking, pineapple on pizza. How dare you ask that question? To answer is a scandal, but I actually really do like pineapple on pizza, and my wife would kill me because she's a native New Yorker and thinks it's blasphemy. So, I get to eat all her pineapple. So, question. How many games are we running at GaryCon? Oh, I only see one. Well, that means someone signed up for an official. Oh, Rob. Or no. Who signed up? I don't remember who is running an official Shadowdark event, which delights me. Thank you so much. But we're just doing open tables. So I'm going to be there, and lots of cool people are going to be there running Shadowdark games, but we're doing it unscheduled, like in the halls. I'm usually up like across from the Legends of Wargaming room. I tend to find a good table there. So, yeah. What else? Yeah, people are upset about the pineapple. I know. Anchovy and pineapple. Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know. Anchovies are kind of weird. Little fish. Okay. Question, do you do your own marketing, or was there a team? Thank you. Yeah, it's honestly, my wife is she's like the commanding officer of a starship. Like, it's just us. And she is such a talented artist across every genre. Like she does marketing material, of course. She's worked in jobs where she was like a head marketing designer. And so I think it's funny because I think that she makes us look way more professional and special than we might actually be, because it's just her and me. She makes us look like we matter when we don't. And so she has helped create kind of just a good plan, I guess. I mean, it's about making sure that you're just keeping people informed of what's going on, and that you're conveying your own excitement to the people who are hopefully also excited, and trying to make things look nice. And that, I mean, I know like that we've gotten a lot of YouTube coverage, and one of them was a paid thing. You know, Ben Milton, that's how he operates with something like this, and he's a professional and ethical, and you know, says that something is such. And of course, with a project like this, there's always going to be like some advertising budget. But if you saw how small our initial advertising budget was, I think you guys would laugh at me. You'd think, who's this amateur? So anyway, yeah. Just marry somebody who's like the most proficient artist and has such a keen sense for how to communicate with people, and then write a book and she'll help you publish it. Okay, question. Can you talk a bit about the carousing aspect of Shadowdark? Yeah, I love carousing. It's like a Conan the Barbarian like love letter element, because Conan started every story totally flat out of money, even though he ended the last story, you know, like stealing the jewels of Gwalhur, or something I'm probably mispronouncing also. And so I wanted to, so in 5th edition D&D, like gold just doesn't feel like it really has a purpose. And I wanted it to matter in Shadowdark, because you're spending so much effort to go get the treasure so that you can get experience points, which is great. But then what do you do with it, you know? And so I wanted to make a system that would cause gold to matter all the way up through the time that you spent it. And that combined with the whole Conan the Barbarian and Fafhrd and the Grey Mouse are always being flat broke no matter how much they found. And it made sense to turn that into a carousing system. So, question. Why do you hate fun and hammers, Doc? Hammers is, should we just tell people the joke about hammers? It's like the biggest inside. There's some really bad inside jokes that are, I mean, by bad, I mean good. In the initial playtest of Shadowdark, we had an equipment list, as one does. And there were iron spikes and hammers, of course, and they were 2 separate items. And it became clear to me that hammers were like really, they just weren't fun, because they took up a very precious item slot and did literally nothing except enable you to use your iron spikes. And while that makes sense, game design is not always about what makes sense. It's about what is fun and can be like abstracted away a little bit, you know, like there's all these different corners of game design and philosophies, and how much realism do you want, you know, how much do you want it to represent the real world or not. And I'm a little bit more on the side of allowing things to be abstracted in order to make things fun and easy. And it turned out that hammers were not fun because they took up a gear slot for no reason. So we got rid of them, and it turned into a joke, like, bring back the hammers, where are the hammers, why don't we have hammers? It continues to be a joke, and I love it. So, all right, question. When writing Shadowdark, what was your one guiding principle for the design? Oh, that's so nice of you to ask. There were maybe a few. Let me see. You know what? I'm going to switch this to another screen. I had this set up in case we needed it. This is me plus book. And in the Game Master section, I have a core ethos, which is trying to sort of explain the cornerstone philosophies behind the design. And these were things that I actually worked out before I ever really sat down to write the system. You needed to know these things about what were going to be your most important elements that you would design the game around and bake into it so deeply that they became intrinsic. And the core ethos page tries to explain those, because it's useful for a game master to know if you're tinkering. And also because I want people to know what elements I'm trying to emphasize and make important in the game. So I built the whole game up around this core ethos set right here. And of course there were other little things, but that's the big stuff. So I'll leave that up for a minute. Oops, all the hammers edition. Question, how does Shadowdark handle player-owned or built fortresses? Oh, you know what? We don't have a fortress system. We don't have like a domain level system for it right now. I think that there would be ways to maybe incorporate it that would be somewhat simple and direct. And, you know, maybe we'll try to work something up like that, because actually a lot of people have been asking about that. So I like the idea of the characters having a space that they come back to that's kind of their own, that they can build up. So yeah, I don't have a lot of good insight on that right now, but I would like to write something about that. Question, any advice for someone without publishing experience who wants to write and publish content for Shadowdark? Oh, for sure. Grab the free quick start, which has tons of rules. Like, you can use anything in that. And I would just like whip up a quick adventure, do something fun. Like, honestly, just when you're writing an adventure, I know this might seem like way too high level advice, but you just want to write something that you are delighted by, that makes you cackle, that you know, things that you love. It's not about conforming to like a set of expected tropes, like guarding the caravan as it goes through the mountains and there's going to be orcs attacking. Like, the guarding the caravan thing is a trope, and you don't have to write that. Like, write an adventure about like magical rats pouring through portals in somebody's cellar, or like, you know, take something that's ordinary and make it a little bit different, that in a way that delights you and that brings you joy. Marie Kondo. And just whip out like a 5, 10, 15, maybe 15 rooms is good. 15 rooms is great for like a quick foray in like an old school style dungeon. I think 15 rooms is kind of the threshold for like, yes, you did get to explore. Put some fun stuff in those rooms. Put some NPCs in those rooms. Put some people who wish the characters harm and those who want to ally with the characters. Put some people in there who are fighting with each other. Put some monsters that want things. Put some monsters that have things. And then put a trap. There you go. And then publish it. And don't hesitate to publish your work, because when I first started out, feels like many years ago now. I mean, it was you know. If I was too concerned about something like looking nice and being perfect, I would never have published. And then I can only imagine if that was the decision I had made now. You know, like if I had thought, shucks, I'm just going to put this in the drawer and never publish it. Like, that would have been a big mistake. So don't ever hesitate to put your work out there, and you will refine the way you do things as you go. But people ain't going to be mad about something that you put out even from the beginning, as long as it's good. One of my best known adventures is the first one I ever published. So bear that in mind. Okay, question. Suggestion for handling inventory if the party drags a donkey or cart into the dungeon. I mean, if the characters do something outrageous to try to tamper with the inventory system, then just be outrageous right back. I mean, how long is a donkey going to survive in a dungeon? The monsters are going to eat that thing instantaneously, or it's a donkey, so its morale is going to break instantaneously. So, you know, like, only escalate when your players escalate, and then escalate in kind. So there we go. Question, what would book 2 contain of a hardcover? Oh, book 2 for Shadowdark? I haven't planned a book 2. It's only one book. I'll have to get back to you on that one. I don't know. Okay, questions. Any more questions? I think we're kind of starting to finally run out of questions. We've been going for a while now. Is it more than an hour now? Geez. Well, we're seeing people saying that they would love more t-shirts. My wife has promised that she will help design some t-shirts. She used to, like, at one point in her career, she was a clothing designer too, for like major stores. Like, she worked in like Garment District in like, you know, New York. So thank goodness we have her to help us make some cool shirts. Definitely planning to. We'll probably put them straight up on my website, because actually, like, shirts and all that on Kickstarter are an incredibly challenging logistical problem, especially this late into the game. So we're probably just gonna put them up straight for sale on my website and try to price them very reasonably. And then you'll get them faster too. So, question, how did professional writing for a few papers help my writing style? Oh, well, when you're a journalist, you have to be really brief and impactful in your writing. And I think that learning that style of writing and really, really putting it into practice helped me convey information clearly and simply and effectively. And that is what you want to do, I think, when you're writing a document that's meant to be like essentially an instructional manual for other people about how to play your game. So I think that practicing the art of cutting words and cutting content, and the classic kill your darlings, where even though you love how you wrote something, if it doesn't serve the overall purpose, you need to get rid of it. And I think that learning how to do that and not be super beholden to your own writing so that you can edit it is the most important thing. Oh, JD's here. I love you too, my big bro. Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. Doc says, question, my baby wants to know if she can have a bottle. You can give her a bottle anytime you want, Doc. You know that. No, just kidding. Wow, an Arcane Library themed bottle. That would be some like true cult paraphernalia right there with the eye on it and everything. Question, given current printing and shipping issues, how confident are you on the July estimate? I'm pretty confident. I thought that was like a middle of the road date to choose. Because we're working with a printing house, actually 2 printing houses that can operate at very, very large scale. And they've done this 1,000 bazillion times. So the current scale of the Kickstarter, while mind-boggling, isn't really anywhere close to like their boundaries and limitations. So they should be good there. We're going to ship out the files super, super fast. So I think that, we're not going to have a huge delay between the Kickstarter ending and going to print. Maybe I think there's like a 2-week holding period for funds, and then I will be able to pay the printers and send them all the stuff. And then production takes a couple months, and then shipping it back to the US takes some time. And then the fulfillment house we're using is used to really large volume, and they can turn around huge Kickstarters in like 2 days. So I am fairly confident in July. I don't have a crystal ball, but I feel like it's a reasonable estimate. So thank you for asking. Question, will you have local distribution in the UK, EU, and Australia? For this Kickstarter, I will not have local distribution simply because I was totally blindsided by how much people would want it in Europe and stuff, but I'm gonna work on that. I think that if anything, this Kickstarter has shown me that there's an audience for the game, and that that people are telling us they want us to make it more available, and so we have the resources to do that now. And so I'm gonna try to have the next step be making all of that stuff easier for people and getting more of a global presence. I've had so many amazing people reach out about localized language versions of Shadowdark, and that sounds super rad to me too. So it's all stuff to tackle, like kind of one thing at a time, since we're just two ladies running the spaceship. But all thing in due course. So, all right, question, what do you think the likelihood of seeing Arcane Library dice is in the future? Oh, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's really funny. I'm actually like such not a dice collector. It's like the worst. I actually haven't used about like 3 or 4 sets of dice, and I'm very much a like, if I'm not going to use it, I'm not sure I feel okay making it for other people if it's just like not something that I think would be like really impactful. But I need to, like I could make dice for us. I think we should do that. We could easily make a dice set and maybe have like the 20 on the D20 be like the Arcane Library logo. I think that that's something we could easily pursue, probably after the Kickstarter, since the timelines are so tight right now. Question, are ability scores only for calculating modifiers, or do they have some mechanics connected? Great question. They have a mechanic connected. Your strength score determines how many items you can carry. And some monsters deal ability score damage, which is, unless it says it's permanent, it is temporary. But that can cause harm to your character in other ways. So I didn't want to totally remove the rolled numbers, because although that would have been more elegant game design, I think that it was important to me for this game to feel kind of like an edition of D&D, and I didn't want to stray too far from some of those really familiar things, like having a 3d6 rolled stat as a part of your character sheet. So that was like not as much of a game design decision and more of a presentation and feel and vibe decision. So, okay, question. Physical hourglass, yes or no? Okay, yes. Well, I mean, you could use a physical hourglass. Will we make one? I mean, there are people who make such cool hourglasses for cheap that it's like, oh, well, I mean, you can get a really rad one on Amazon. But okay, know this, that your character's torches often don't last the full hour because they either get like extinguished or something happens to them. And having to let the hourglass run out so you can use it again is like an actual logistical problem, which is why I use like an egg timer. Maybe someday we'll get some cooler stuff like some apps that have timers or something. I'm not a big like use your phone at the table kind of person, but I'm not totally, I'm not like totally against it. I just use an egg timer because it's so easy to change if I need to. And it does a soft little ding when the torch runs out that reminds me to bring down terror upon my players. So, question, will there be players only book or PDF? I just didn't really want to split it into 2 books. I like having the whole game in 1 book. So, I don't intend to do that. If there's a huge amount of support for such a thing, then of course I'll listen. But my intention wasn't to do that. So, for now, there's no plan. Question, what will you make Shadowdark versions of your 5e adventures? Oh, well, I've spent so much time with those adventures already writing them that for me, it's a little bit unexciting to return to them, honestly. And I only want to make stuff for you guys that I'm like excited about because I think that really translates into the writing. So I don't have any plans to do that right now just because I think that they are what they are. They were designed for 5th edition, and 5th edition has very different design goals and needs than a game that's more about a systematized exploration of locations, of dungeons. So so not only I don't think that would just work super well, and I just don't think that I have the like genuine interest in doing that. I want to make you guys something new. So, all right, question. In Shadowdark, what would be the printed prop you would most likely to have at your table? Spell cards, character portraits, dungeon scenery, index cards, item cards, or any other? That's a great question. I mean, there's plenty of stuff. I mean, what do you guys think? What would you guys want from that list? I think that item cards could have some value because it's really easy to, you're like, I can have 10 items, for example, here they are. But I really do like just operating off the character sheet in Shadowdark in particular. And, I do like a little bit of dungeon scenery. It's a really hard one. All of those things could be of use. I'm a little bit of a minimalist DM, so like I'm a terrible person to ask that. No fault on you. I am so bad about this, but okay. Questions. I guess how are we are we running out of questions? Oh, question, how do lanterns change the torch economy? They actually are the same, really. A vial of oil burns for an hour. So they're more expensive because you can do more stuff with oil, and lanterns have a little bit more that you can do. Like you can shutter them and turn the light off, so they're more useful, but they work the same amount of time. So, question, outside content creation, how can you help the Arcane Life? Oh, that's so nice. Thank you. You guys have helped me so much. I mean, I can't even imagine. I just play the game with your friends. That's what I want. That's why I wrote it. I want you to play it with your friends. Like, I want people who maybe haven't played old school games to understand why they're fun. And I tried to make it approachable for that reason. And I want people who love old school games to maybe find some joy in the streamlining of the systems, like I think that there's a middle ground to the game that benefits or addresses some of the challenges of both styles of play and tries to cure them. And so just play the game with your friends, play it at your local game store, get people in on your game, be welcoming and friendly, and that would be something that I would love to see because that's ultimately why I wrote this book. So, all right, question. Let's do a few more. Let's go to half past the hour, and then we'll have a good 90-minute long AMA we can post. So, question: if you critical fail using a scroll, do you also lose the ability to cast a known spell? Oh, Spencer, that's such an interesting question. I would say no to that because part of the benefit of the scroll is that it's detached from the wizard and reduces the risk factor for them a little bit. So I personally would rule no to that, but you could rule differently. I mean, why not? You could, as long as you get buy-in from your players and they know how that is how it works. Again, I don't think it would break anything, and it might be kind of exciting. So you could try that. Question: why do I think so many people are connecting with Shadowdark? I guess if I really knew the answer to that question, I will have put lightning in a bottle then. So I don't really think I know exactly. I think that we're at a time in the industry which I couldn't have planned for, because I've been writing this book for like literally 3 years, if not 4, when you start to include the original art I commissioned that started to inspire the ideas. So I think we're at a time in the industry when people are looking to sort of change into a new style or way. I think that the OGL kind of sparked off some kind of mental shift in the whole industry. But I was just coincidentally here for it. This book was coming out anyway. It had been in the works for so long. And I think that kind of like new school players want to understand what old school gaming has to offer that makes it so special. And sometimes that can feel impenetrable to people who haven't played old school games. It can feel difficult to adopt such a radically different gameplay style. And like Stranger Things has put this on the map for people, like AD&D Second Edition, or actually was that what I think that's what they were playing in. I don't even actually know. I have to look again. But it's put it on the map, and I think people want to experience old school gaming, and it's fantastic offerings, and try something new. So, question, how dark and grim is your default setting for Shadowdark? Well, my headcanon setting is like kind of grim. It's a little dark, it's a little bit horror in its underbelly, and a little bit sword and sorcery. So yes, I think that the default vibe is a little bit more on the grim realism side. I mean, it definitely is. It's not gonzo. It's not historical realism. It's not like Renaissance, like high fantasy. It's pretty grim dark. So awesome. It is not like a mega grim dark, but it's like it's there. It's there. So question, do you think traditional creative writing advice applies to writing RPG supplements? Only some things, because an RPG supplement is actually I would say a technical writing document. So I don't think the 3-act structure works for adventures, for Shadowdark or for old school style games at all, because there isn't a story being imposed. There's a story that's emerging in an old school game. So, but the tenets of strong writing are true across the board, being evocative and imaginative and conveying your words well and killing your darlings and doing economy of words. That all matters. And so proficient creative writers are going to come in having that in their arsenal. So, okay, question, should we expect balance between the classes? No. Generally speaking, no. They're not meant to be fair competitors with each other. They're meant to be really good at their particular pillar of gameplay. So imbalance is actually what's fun about game. I would say, and this is during the 4th edition era. I mean, I was playing D&D then, and played a character from 1st through 30th level over the course of years during 4th edition. And one thing that really struck me that I decided I didn't love about the system was that everybody kind of felt the same, because everything was beautifully and perfectly balanced with just, this attention to detail and making sure that all the characters really were scaled to be almost just slightly differently flavored versions of each other. And to me, that kind of lost me, something being notably different is what makes it special, and something being crazy and exciting is what people want. So balance is like not the rule that you must always follow, but rather like the core pattern you want to incorporate, but like Fireball, look at Fireball, the spell Fireball, it's never been balanced, not even in 5th edition. It's always done more damage than every other spell because it's fun. So there we go. Question, how does Shadowdark blacksmiths balance swords without hammers? I know, right? There's absolutely no hammer in the setting at all. They're just banned forever, like a cosmic rift happened. And so no one can forge swords, unfortunately. Yeah, I'm sorry. Question, do you have a list or table of or of setting deities in the book. There are 7 major deities in the book, and then 2 who are unnamed for whatever reason the game master decides. I know in my head why I think that's the case, but it's not my decision to make. It is your decision in your campaign. Question: will there be resources for solo play with Shadowdark? Oh, I actually tried to go down that road in developing Shadowdark, and I got super obsessed with solo play and stuff for a while because I got hooked on Trevor Duvall's channel, which is just so great. His YouTube channel is so entertaining and magnificent. Please go check it out. He runs solo gameplay systems of all different types. And I just couldn't design something better than the Mythic GM emulator when I really sat down to do it. Maybe a couple of little tweaks you can make here and there, but there's a reason that system is so ubiquitous. It's magnificent, and while there are other great solo gameplay systems as well, like, I mean, I just couldn't do better than that one. And so if we somehow reach our top stretch goal on the Kickstarter, which is the like $1 million stretch goal, like I can even understand those words. I'm gonna try to record like a really just like a fun and silly series of solo gameplay runs of me doing solo gameplay with Shadowdark to demonstrate how it would work. And I think it'll be fun, and I will never ever be able to, I would pale in comparison to Trevor, who is just an absolutely brilliant performer, but but it's about having fun, so that's the point. Question: what is on my hoodie, the one I'm wearing right now? I hope nothing. Did I spill on it? I have these. Oh, there's no symbol on it. It's just blank. I'm boring. Question: do you plan to have a starting rule set also be printed, or some player rule handout we can give to players to have quick references for rule references and spells? I mean, really, the quick start guides were kind of meant to serve that purpose. They contain all the relevant spells and everything from the core rules up through level 3 for spellcasters. And they're a brief reference of the rules. It's pages just copied out of the main Shadowdark rules. It's not everything because I couldn't fit everything. They cap out at 68 pages, so you got to fit it all in 68 pages. So, but I think they're really handy references. Question: what rules, section idea, or whatever am I most proud of? Wow. I'm the most tickled by the torch timer because I think that was a fun revelation. It solved a lot of problems, actually, that I was dealing with in the design. But I mean, taken on its own, is it a gimmick? Sure. It's something anyone could easily incorporate into their game. But when you build the game system around it, I'm not just slapping it on there, but the whole game system is built around it. Then it starts to become exciting, I think. So that was a fun one. Gosh, I don't know. Is there anything that hasn't been done before? I'm sure everything's been done before, but I'm most proud of how I built the systems from scratch, from nothing, to support those pillars, like the torch and all that. So, question: will it be on DTRPG after the Kickstarter? No, that has not already been asked. I don't think so, because drive-through is not really my business model. I have a website that I sell direct through, PDFs and otherwise, and the reason is because, and this is no ding on drive-through or anyone who uses it, but they take about 30% of a royalty for each sale, and for at least for me, that is unsustainable for my bottom line. So I just really can't sell stuff on drive-through, and to be selling it on drive-through and my website means that drive-through is competing directly with my direct sales and then not paying me as much, and so it doesn't make really a lot of sense business-wise for me if I don't want to actually harm my business. I hate to say that because drive-through is like really great for some people, but just for me in particular, it actually does more harm to me than good, and I just can't justify doing it, unfortunately. So, JP question: what's my favorite monster in the book, and can I show the art? Oh, that's so nice of you to ask. Let me see here. Let me see. What's my favorite monster? Gosh, some of this is such cool art that, like, do I choose it based on the art? Do I choose it based on the mechanics? This one's actually on the Kickstarter page, so maybe this isn't that exciting, but I think that the art that Lucas Corte did for the Remorhaz is just, like, heart-stopping. Like, look at that. Oh. I mean, this guy, wow, I'm, like, looking into a mirror. The eyes, like, this thing coming at you, I just like, I can't stop looking at it. He is so impressive. I mean, just what an amazing artist to work with. I'm so lucky that I got to trick him into making art for this project. I actually really enjoy the center spread of the book that Yuri did. It's not exactly in the center actually, but it's mostly in the center. This is kind of like a big dungeon crawling scene, and it's really fun to look at. The prompt that I kind of like that we kind of worked out together was that I was like, can you make like a Where's Waldo dungeon crawling scene? And he was like, yes. So that one is really rad. Oh, JP, thank you. The eyes, right? The eyes are just like, they're like somehow transfix you off the page. They're just spectacular. I am just so impressed. All right, so we already went over. So maybe one last thing too. Oh my gosh. Well, I told people I would show you guys the mini DM screen in this. And so let's end on that. I want you guys to see the relative size of it, like in real life, and the art on it, which my wife drew, because she's amazing. And I want to just kind of give you guys a feel for what it looks like and its weight and everything, since it's kind of one of the more unique items. So this is it. It's really thick, and it has a central hinge and then 2 side hinges so that it folds together into a clamshell kind of look like that, which is it's actually about a 1/2 inch thick. So it's 4 panels, and it's the same height as the book. And so this is the art on it going across like that. You know, and it stands up like this. And it has charts on the inside, some taken from the book. Some are actually custom for the screen itself. They're not just cribbed from the book. But to me, as a game master who has to improvise a lot, the most important elements that I often run into that I need help on are generating interesting NPCs and names. You know, remembering our charts for random encounters, because we're rolling on these charts to determine like the encounter's activity, the starting distance, their reaction to the characters. And then generating unique treasure, because you know, how many times have you been like, yeah, you guys find a treasure, and then you're like, and what could it be? So this section in particular, there's actually some custom charts here that are just for this screen. They're not in the book anywhere, but you know, like a unique feature. And then, you know, reminders about guidelines for how much XP to give out for treasure quality. And then the luxury items table, which is just the table for rolling something fancy and valuable. And it has just an insane amount of permutations you can roll. And so I always found that chart to be like super useful for improvising treasure. And, you know, this is how the chart, the GM screen stacks up next to the book. You know, this is them together. It's slightly shorter than the book because the book has like a case binding around it. So that's it. I'm super proud of it. And if you get one, the first person to find Easter eggs should message me, and I don't know, maybe I got to give you a prize or something. That'd be fun. Okay. So I think there we are, you all. I think there we are. So that was a really great chat. We even went over. I mean, I was blabbing for longer than I even realized. Thank you for asking all these questions and indulging all of my answers. And, you know, ask questions on the Kickstarter still. I'm trying to be active on there. Does this GM screen have the wrong legendary item XP? It does. This was a proof print. And I accidentally had the old table on there. So the new table is corrected. But this was just a proof print. So the new ones are fine. But good eye. That's all fixed. And I just want to say thank you guys all. Thank you for the congratulations, for the support. Thank you so much for being interested in running Shadowdark and being excited for it and getting your friends to play it so that we can all play it together and I can write cool adventures for you guys, which is what I've always wanted to do. So wonderful. We will all stay in touch. Plenty more to come this month. Live plays, Gary Con, Monster Monday is coming up. I'm excited to give that to you guys. It's going to be fun. And we will all catch up soon. Let's see what happens with the Kickstarter. Let's see where we are in a few weeks. So thank you so much, everybody. I will catch you guys all later. All right, bye-bye.